Imagine having the perfect physique was as simple as simply drawing how you want to look, being muscular, lean, and of course, getting rid of those stubborn love handles. Well, it's not that easy, but what I do have for you is a simple 5-step attack plan that I can illustrate for you and show you exactly how you can not only get rid of those stubborn love handles, but actually get that lean and muscular look in the process. Now, any discussion of losing body fat, or specifically what's going on down here in terms of the love handles, is going to have to start not down here, but up here. We're talking about what you're putting in your mouth. Because nutrition is where you always have to responsibly start whenever you're talking about trying to create a caloric deficit so that you can lose body fat. But the issue is, a lot of us don't know where to start. But there is an easy place to do a jump off from, and that is to take two simple numbers, 12 and 15, and then focus your attention right up here on that top row of abs. Can you see them? If you look in the mirror, if you have visible abs, then what you're going to do is take your body weight and multiply it by 15. If you do not have visible abs, you take your body weight and you multiply it by 12. And what that gives you is a simple starting point, a caloric total that you should be targeting each day to then determine whether or not you're in maintenance or maybe you need to make more adjustments. So how long does this last? Just 2 weeks. If you follow an eating plan, which should roughly be the same types of foods every day or so for the next 2 weeks, you can identify a caloric starting point that you can now start to make adjustments to that will give you the confidence of knowing you're moving in the right direction to ultimately losing those love handles and getting the physique that you want. There is one thing you have to make sure that you do here though. I mentioned eating roughly the same foods. There's a reason why. Because all foods are not created equally. If you eat a steak at home, but then you go out to Applebee's and eat steak, I can assure you they're not the same steak calorically. The one you had at home is probably 500 calories or so grilled nicely on your backyard grill. The one at Applebee's, with all the extra butter and sauces they throw on it, is probably closer to 1,800 calories. So when you go back into your calorie counting app and say, I ate steak, no, you did not. At least not the same version of it in the two different places. So in order to be very accurate in determining what that maintenance level of calories is, you want to make sure you're giving it accurate information. The other thing is something called the thermic effect of food. Proteins come at a higher cost calorically for our bodies just to even break them down. So if you start to shift the amount of protein that you eat versus carbohydrates during this time, you're going to maybe lose some of that accuracy. So again, trying to eat the same type of foods during this 2-week testing period is really crucial. Once you have that number, then the only thing left to do is just watch and see what happens. Now, if you find that you're not losing weight, you just adjust your calories down by 10%. So if you're at 2,000 calories, drop them by another 200 and then once again reassess. Once you've reached a level of maintenance where you're not gaining or losing weight over the course of the 2 weeks, well then you can start to adjust from there, whether it be very aggressive by about 500 calorie deficit or so, or maybe less aggressive 200 or 300 calories. The point is you can start to ensure that you're actually getting into that hypocaloric state required to lose the body fat to put you on the right path to losing those love handles. Now the good news is creating that deficit that's capable of giving you that tapered waistline isn't all the responsibility of what you put in your mouth, but actually the activity that's going on down here. No, Jesse, not that kind of activity. You see, because even though you can never outrun a bad diet, you can contribute to the calories out portion of the equation to allow you to drop more body fat by increasing your activity. And guess what? You actually don't have to run. As a matter of fact, you might want to start walking some more because that's much more effective when we're talking about creating fat loss. Why? Because it's more sustainable. A lot of us find the task of running to be either too hard on our joints or too demanding to repeat multiple times during the week. But simply taking an extra walk throughout the day or multiple times in a week is actually much more obtainable and achievable. So what are we talking about? Well, a 180-pound person can burn an extra 330 calories by walking for an hour at a pace of just 3.5 miles per hour. That's not really that fast. But again, it's something that we could easily do. And maybe you don't have time to do 1 hour of additional training multiple times a week, but you can sneak it in other ways. You can take the stairs, or you can park your car further away. We can deliberately try to get more steps in our day just by being more conscious of it, realizing that with every extra step we take, we're burning a few additional calories that will help to contribute to that deficit that is required to help you to get to those leaner levels of body fat. Now I know what you're thinking, but Jeff, doesn't the extra intensity of the HIIT training actually lead to more calories burned? That's actually not how it works, because even if you took a hard exercise, one of the hardest, a burpee, and performed it for a minute, you're going to burn 15 calories, which is much more than you do in a minute of walking. But how many minutes are you sustaining burpees for? Like, could you even do burpees for 10 minutes straight? Likely not. So the 10 minutes at 15 calories burned is only 150 calories burned, whereas again, we talked about 330 in a more sustained low intensity effort like walking. So again, it's not always about what can be done, but more importantly about what can be done consistently, and this is actually easier work, so it's more likely you're gonna actually do it. Now, what if there was a cheat code or a hack that allowed you to visually attack that waistline of yours through exercise that didn't involve a single exercise for your waistline? Specifically, no side bends. Don't ever do a side bend. What I'm talking about here, guys, is actually fixing the appearance of that waistline of yours by visually creating a wider physique through the use of exercises that target your shoulders, specifically your middle delts, and your lats, so you get more of that visible V-taper from the top to the bottom. You actually create what we call this Dorito chip shape. And the reason we get this is because we get the middle delts becoming more prominent, and we get that tapering width down towards the waistline from a well-developed set of lats. Well, you're going to need to do some exercises that do that. And some of my favorite ways to target the middle delts are simply with lateral raises. And there's a lot of ways we can do this. We can either do it with lighter weights, with more focused tension on the delts, by performing slower repetitions with really good form and no substitution with other muscle groups. Or we can do something more explosive and powerful like a cheat lateral that also helps to overload the delts and build them in the process. When it comes to the back, you're going to want to focus on the exercises that actually train more of the lats rather than the upper back or the thickness of the back. And these exercises are really more of those vertical pulling exercises like a lat pull down or an underhand pull down or even a pull up or a variation of a pull up. You can even do exercises like the row as long as you're keeping that elbow tucked tight to your side, or even something more lat specific like a straight arm push down. All these exercises do a great job of training the lats to give you more of that visible V-taper, and again, create that illusion at least while you're working on the rest of the steps here to get a more broad top and more tapered waistline that will get you liking more of what you see in the mirror while you move on to step 4. And so step 4 is where a lot of you, let's face it, probably skip forward to, because you wanted to find out, how do I deal with this right here? Again, it starts with all the stuff we discussed already. But if this was in a museum, this would be the part you'd likely focus on. Your eyes would go right here, and there's a reason for it, because the six-pack kind of tends to do that. Look, even somebody with definitive love handles looks instantly better when you start to etch in some abs, because visibly, they actually happen to soften the appearance of those softer love handles by giving you something else to look at. But they also do something much more important than that. This right here becomes the inspiration to keep going in order to get to the point where you can actually lose those love handles. See, what men experience is something called top-down fat loss, meaning when we start to lose weight, we start to see it first in our face, and then in our neck, and then usually through our chest, and then it starts to work its way down into that upper row of abs. And when you can even start to see just that top row, you become inspired to keep going, because a lot of us stop long before that point. Did you ever see that cartoon of the two diamond miners where they're digging away trying to get to the diamonds? One's only about halfway there, but he's really eagerly going and chopping away, whereas the one on the bottom is quitting, not knowing that he's only about 6 inches away from finally hitting pay dirt. You don't want to be that guy. It's going to take some time to finally get down to that top-down fat loss all the way down to those love handles. Usually the last ones to go is going to be the fat that's right down there, low upon your waist. So what does that mean? We need the inspiration. Nobody keeps going without something that continues to drive them. And as you start to see that top row of abs, it really behooves you to make sure that you're doing something to train the abs so that they actually look good. So this is where you want to start doing some ab exercises. Now, what are they going to be? I'm going to tell you right now, top-down ab exercises. What that means is exercises where you're just moving the top and leaving the pelvis fixed. And it's not because you can specifically target the top abs. You can't do that. But what it does is it gives you an easier set of ab exercises to delve into so that you can remain consistent. And more importantly, you can get started on without it being too difficult for you. So we're talking about exercises like a classic crunch, where you're moving those shoulders towards the fixed pelvis. Or maybe a crunch pull down, where once again, you're using some additional weight here, but you're moving towards a fixed pelvis. Or even something like a power up, which requires more of a sit up, but you're doing it once again with just moving your shoulders towards the fixed pelvis. All of these exercises are much easier to do than some of the hanging ab exercises that require you to be able to lift the weight of your legs. You don't need to do that, but you do need to start worrying about hitting those abs if you want to be able to ultimately get down to that stubborn body fat that's hanging around your waistline. And so that now brings us to the obliques. And if you're looking to get rid of those love handles, guess what you're going to have to train? The obliques. Because if we look at that picture of art once again, what would happen if I actually got rid of the frame around those abs? It just doesn't look as impressive. Because when it comes to the artwork, your obliques are framing in your abs. They're actually giving you that visual tapering that makes your abs look a lot more impressive. But as I said, you're going to have to train them. But this is where we have a problem. Because a lot of people think, the big myth out there, that training your obliques gives you a big, thick, blocky waist. No, that's only if you're building your obliques up and you still have them covered by a lot of fat. Because you can see right here, when you get rid of that fat, those obliques look really, really good and really impressive. So when we're talking about training the obliques, you have to do rotational exercises. And I'm going to tell you this, the faster you can move away from just the bodyweight exercises and add some resistance, the more these muscles in here are going to respond to start shaping up and carving in and giving you that really tapered waistline. So I'm talking about exercises like this to start where you're just using rotation either from the bottom up or from the top down, but then moving into some form of resistance like a band where you could do rotational work like this. Or even using the weight of your own legs and doing hanging leg raises like this. Again, building up to this, if you can't start here, is fine. You can actually do this exercise laying on the ground and still getting that rotational work in. Anything we can do to incorporate the rotation of the pelvis while we're moving is going to help us to start training those obliques. Now, here's the other thing I don't want you to do. Don't be one of those diamond digger quitters, right? Because remember what I said, it's this area that's the last to come off. You could lose all the fat from here and it starts to work its way all the way down. It's that stubborn area around your waistline that's so hard to get rid of. But don't quit. Use the motivation you got from starting to see some of the progress elsewhere and some of these tricks to visually taper in that waistline to keep you motivated to keep going, to keep digging and chipping away until you hit that pay dirt. Because ultimately, there's nobody walking the face of the earth that's genetically disposed to always having fat all around their waist. If you stick to the plan, this fat is not unlike any other fat in your body. It will ultimately come off, and when it does, you'll look much better for it. If you're looking for more help on nutrition, then make sure you check out this video over here where I cover 2 strategies to help you actually speed up your fat loss. And if you're looking to pare down those ab exercises to just 2, then check out the only 2 ab exercises you need here. Guys, remember to turn your notifications and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Check out our full programs and meal plans available over at ATHLEAN-X.com. All right, guys, good luck.